We welcome into the show now a couple of former BYU football players, Brian Logan and David Nixon. Nice to have you with us, guys.
Good to be here.
Signing day is maddening for a lot of people, coaches, players, fans, but it's a good experience once you ink the dotted line. Brian, how was that experience for you?
Yeah, for me it was, it wasn't too stressful, it wasn't too crazy, nothing special. I didn't have a lot of big time schools offering me, didn't have a lot of D1 offers. So it was very easy. I knew I was going to BYU. I committed to Coach Minute on the spot on my recruiting trip. And I remember, trying to just sleep in and my mom kind of just nagging me and that alarm clock in my ear saying, wake up, you got to sign. I said, Mom, they already know I'm coming. Leave me alone. Let me get another hour of sleep. Let me get some rest. And she was just like, no, they need you. They need it faxed in by this time. We have to do it. Don't miss this opportunity. So, that was pretty funny. And she had, breakfast and everything made for me. But, it was just a surreal moment, finally signed that D1 scholarship, something that I worked for my whole life.
Now, you mean no big-time Division I schools other than BYU, right?
That's true.
Okay.
Watching just TV this morning and seeing guys that had offers from Alabama and LSU, and you see them lined up with all their hats. I didn't have that. I had a whole bunch of D2 scholarships, and then I had BYU there, which is an easy selection for my.
You played the hat game at your house.
I did.
Right.
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
David Nixon.
Correct.
How was signing day for you?
It was fun. I can remember as if it was yesterday, all those 10+ years ago. But in my day, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have all the social media things. So basically, I woke up that morning. I knew I was going to BYU. I committed to BYU. But at the same time, throughout the whole recruiting process, you go through lots of coaches from different teams that you've met. And so to finally put it all to rest and sign that dotted line was a huge relief. But looking back, it was one of the best times to go through that process. And that's why I always tell kids that are going through it, enjoy it. Because the second you sign that dotted line, you're now that team's person. And it's go time.
You ready to tackle the hard questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, this is how we're going to do it. I got 5 questions. I want both of you to answer, starting with this. Who is the biggest impact player out of this recruiting class? Brian, go.
Well, I got to go the JC route, obviously. And I got to go with my man, Nick Kurtz, wide receiver. Highly recruited JC guy. Watching his highlight tape when I first seen it, I thought it was his high school highlight tape, and I was like, okay, where's the JC? And you look how big he is compared to the rest of the players on the field, and being 6'6", with the speed he's able to run away from guys. This is just another weapon for Taysom Hill, and you talk about replacing Cody Hoffman. That doesn't happen, but this gives you a great chance to fill that void.
See him running away from people right there. Very impressive. David, who do you have as the biggest impact player out of this signee class?
Well, I'm going to stick right there with the wide receiver position. I'm going with Jordan Leslie, transfer from UTEP. He finished his years there at UTEP and now is coming over to BYU for 1 year. He'll only be here for a year, but this is a guy that throughout his career had over 2,000 yards receiving. He's been in the big positions. He's played in the big situations, and he's a big, true player. And I talked to Taysom Hill, and he's very excited to be able to throw to Jordan Leslie.
You feel like these guys will make an impact right away. Okay, that is in contrast to who is the best overall player out of this signing class. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I think the best overall player is Fred Warner. I would love to say Nick Kurtz, but he's only going to be here for 2 years. Fred Warner is somebody who's a guy that's a freshman from high school. You're going to have him for all 4 years, and he kind of reminds you as like a Kyle Van Noy. His body type, 6'3", 205 pounds right now. Kind of the same body frame that Kyle had when he first arrived at BYU. Then he was able to put on about 20, 30 pounds. But you look at the speed and athleticism that this kid has, and it's just phenomenal for BYU to, in that 3-4 defense, and David could attest, to have these athletic linebackers. And for somebody to, a kid like that, to come in and kind of fill that void for Kyle Van Noy, great opportunity for him.
Brian's going with Fred Warner. David, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with the tight end, Matt Bushman. We know, Matt's kind of underneath the radar. I'm going with him as a sleeper. Matt Bushman's a tall body. Reminds me a lot of Dennis Pitta. Coach Minhall kind of referenced him earlier to Johnny Harline, but I think he reminds me a lot of Dennis Pitta. I was a freshman with Dennis Pitta. Skinny guy, came in about 210, same size as Matt, but then obviously put on some weight and became one of the best pass catchers in BYU's history. And I see Matt Bushman being the same type of player. Once again, kind of a sleeper pick, but watching the film, he's athletic. He goes goes up, makes catches, and he's able to separate himself from the defender. So looking forward to him. He's going on his mission first, but when he gets back, looking for him to make a huge impact also.
Speaking of sleepers, I love this category. Most underrated player. What do you think, Brian?
It's got to be Jatarius Gully, defensive lineman, big nose guard from Alabama. Went to Hoover High School, won some championships there. A lot of people. I remember watching them in high school. This program on MTV and just the championships and how great this program was. And he didn't get a lot of looks for for the situation that he was in as far as the SEC schools. I think that he lacks a little bit of speed and quickness, but I think BYU, Coach Kafusi will do a great job of teaching him technique and trimming him down a little bit to get a quicker step. But in that 3-4 defense, you do need a big nose guard like Romney Fuka to eat up those offensive linemen. And when you look at the goal line stands for BYU, the past few years, BYU's had some great goal line stands, and this is another addition to help with that.
David, who's the guy that deserves to be talked about but won't be talked about?
Yeah, I think it goes for Tyler Cook. A lot of talk's been about Fred Warner, that big star recruit out of California, but I think Tyler Cook is one of those players that can come in and make an immediate impact also. We see that he's kind of a defensive end in these 4-3 situations, but in the 3-4, I see him moving him out to outside linebacker. Ran a 4.51, which is incredibly fast. But the player, Tyler's just an athlete. He's a player. He can go out there and make big plays. And so once again, he's another player I think that will be able to come in and help contribute on that BYU defense.
All right, you're going with the linebacker.
Hey, stick with the linebackers.
Classic David Nixon move. Which of these position groups qualifies as the strongest?
Being a DB, it's kind of hard for me to say this, but it's got to be the receivers.
Wow, okay.
It has to be. And you look at that group starting from Trey Dye, his speed and being a 4-4 guy, replacing a guy like J.D. Falslev, especially in the return game. And then you look at the JC transfers and just the immediate impact that they can have. When JC, you're looking for guys to play immediately. It's going to help Taysom Hill, and I know he's got to be ecstatic for having some weapons for him next year.
Well, you were one of those quick fix players that we talked about earlier in the program with Bronco Mendenhall. All right, David, who do you got?
Yeah, no, I agree. Wide receivers is a huge part of this class, but I think linebackers also. We just mentioned Tyler Cook, Fred Warner, and a lot of return missionaries coming back that will help contribute. So I think linebackers, with the absence of Waniunga and Cal Van Noy, you bring back some of these players and some new faces. I think they're going to be a strong unit this year.
Brian Logan, David Nixon, great to have you guys with us on the Signing Day special.